I think there's good news when it comes to Toshi, and what is that? Not too long ago, it was announced that Toshi is now live on Binance Alpha. It said that the bridge to the BNB chain is now live via Hyperlane. However, based on this post by Toshi on X, it does say that bridging is optional. Why do I think it's a major victory? It's because if we take a look at Binance, very massive. I like the sound of that. I also like the sound of Binance Alpha. Not to mention the BNB chain still has a lot of hype in my opinion. Still has a lot of attention. I get it. Sometimes people like to say, "Oh, how about Solana? How about Ethereum?" Well, they have a lot of attention, but then at the same time, BNB chain, I do like it because it's one of the biggest out there in terms of the recognition. Now, let's not forget, Toshi is a meme coin on the Base network. The Base network is Coinbase's layer 2. But as a layer 2, the Base network, beyond having that Coinbase sort of association, it doesn't really have that mainstream recognition, in my perspective, when compared to something like Arbitrum, for instance, or even something like Optimism, which actually, interestingly enough, helped build the Base network in collaboration with Coinbase. But still, Optimism, we take a look at something like Arbitrum, they seem to have more mainstream recognition. Now, something like the Base network doesn't really have that as of right now, in my perspective. So then seeing something regarding the BNB chain, I think is a big thumbs up for me. Now, let me harp back a little bit as to why I don't think the Base network may have that sort of Optimism or Arbitrum type of recognition. I think it's because the Base network doesn't have its own native token. Like, for instance, Optimism, there's Arbitrum, there's ARB. If we take a look at some other layer 2s out there, there's Miria, there's Immutable, and we take a look at IMX with Immutable, right? It's native token. So I think because by nature, those other projects that I mentioned before, they have their own native token, there's just going to be much more hype and attention, as opposed to something like the Base network, which doesn't have a native token. The hype may be a little bit limited because there's no way, for instance, for me to take a look at the price of the Base token on a chart and then see how it's doing. Whereas I can see that with aka Optimism, Arbitrum, aka ARB. So there's that kind of hindrance in that hype. But if anything, I think that may actually be a good thing for the projects on the Base network, because if there is no way for me to get the Base token, so to speak, let's say it's native token, how can I kind of believe in that at the same time, kind of maybe go along with the ride if it does go up? And I think that's by me believing in projects that are on the Base network. Keep in mind, there's something like Toshi, there's something like Aerodrome, which is a decentralized exchange, and there's Brett, which is another meme coin, but then people still do believe it's kind of better than Toshi as of right now. However, I may argue that when it comes to Toshi, I like I would say origin, because it's named after Brian Armstrong's pet cat. Brian Armstrong is the co-founder of Coinbase, so it makes sense there. Not to mention, Toshi's name is very similar to Satoshi Nakamoto, which is allegedly the creator of Bitcoin, and also, Toshi is listed on Coinbase. So then, if we think about that, it just kind of makes sense. The name origin, the vibe. Let's take a look at that around $8.5 billion market cap, which it would have, again, at the price of 2 cents, considering current circulating supply. If we take a look at that figure, that's around 10% of Dogecoin's all-time high market cap, and that was back in 2021. I'm not saying Dogecoin, what maybe it could do during this cycle. I'm saying, again, back then, years ago. And we had way less crypto owners back then, around 300 million at the peak of that bull run in 2021. Now we have over 600 million. And keep in mind, we have over 600 million currently. That's not a projection. That's not, oh, if let's say Bitcoin went to 200 grand, 300 grand. No, that's what we have right now. So if let's say the altcoin season really had that momentum, really kickstarted during the cycle, and we see what we kind of saw back in 2021, but maybe a lot better, would there only be around 600 million crypto owners? Or would there be more? At that point, around an $8.5 billion market cap really wouldn't seem too outlandish to me, even though I do not know the future. This is just the way I view it. However, at the same time, if someone said, would I rather choose Toshi, Bitcoin, or Ethereum? And look, this may be different on a case-by-case basis, but just personally for me, I am not speaking on anyone's behalf, I would say Toshi. The reason being is because Bitcoin going to 300 grand, that's less than a 3x from here. Ethereum going to 10 grand, that's less than a 3x from here as well. Toshi, even just let's say going to the price of 1 cent, that's already over a 15x. Even half a cent, give or take around a 7x, still way better maybe than a 3x. hypothetically, in my perspective. So then, at the same time, I just kind of feel like either Toshi goes to 2 cents, 1 cent, half a cent. Even if that is the case, maybe I would still not choose Bitcoin or Ethereum over this, but this is just my perspective. And I get it. Some people may be thinking, whoa, why would you say that? This is a meme coin. I get that. But if I take a look at the base network, what are the top 3 projects on there in terms of popularity? Many people are going to say probably Aerodrome, Toshi, Brett. In no specific order, but I'm saying many people that I know out there can't name 5 projects on the base network. This is how I think kind of early the base network is. Considering even how it has that Coinbase aspect, it still doesn't have that many reputable projects. If I'm talking about Ethereum, there's a bunch of Ethereum meme coins, and let alone even other projects beyond meme coins on Ethereum, they're so popular. If I talk about Solana, there's many popular projects on Solana. It's not just meme coins. But if I take a look at something like Base, it's a little bit of a struggle for many people to even mention more than 5 projects on the Base network, whereas it's kind of easy to name 10 or 20 projects on Solana, on Ethereum, for instance, or even also on the BNB chain. I find it so fascinating to me that a meme coin like Toshi, which isn't even that big in the grand scheme of things in terms of market cap, is considered one of the top most reputable projects on Coinbase's layer 2. And Coinbase is so massive. Coinbase, keep in mind, is publicly listed. And their layer 2, basically a top 3 project on there, 2 out of the top 3 maybe in terms of popularity are meme coins. That's kind of ridiculous for me to think about. It's kind of crazy to think about how something that massive or has that reputation and having a layer 2, and that layer 2 not really having that many dynamic projects yet. I think maybe in the grand scheme of things, I would still consider the base network kind of early in its stage because it still hasn't had that reputation yet. But I don't mind, because the way I take a look at it is that maybe the lower something is, the room for growth theoretically may be bigger than, let's say, if the bar was set higher, right? As opposed to when it's lower. However, usually altcoins, as a worst case scenario, they typically peak around 18 months after a Bitcoin halving event, and the last Bitcoin halving event happened in April of last year, so 18 months on top of that, that's around October this year. That's no guarantee, but that's based off history after all. However, it just doesn't seem like maybe that is too far of a time frame if that is the case, and not to mention, it doesn't seem like it's too little time anyways. I mean, take a look at how fast Bitcoin moved. And that's literally the biggest project out there. Not too long ago, hit a new all-time high, now it's having a pullback. We're not talking about gold, we're not talking about the S&P 500, where sometimes moves, or should I say massive moves, may take quite a while. This doesn't seem to be the case within this space. So whether or not it does happen in October, or let's say November, December, Q1 of next year, I do not know the exact moment in time. However, what I can do is just prepare myself for a moment in which it does that by just holding, waiting, and that's pretty much it. And feel free to subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I would greatly appreciate it. It's been Lee the Captain, and I'll catch you all on the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.